Good morning, everyone. Just got back from taking a friend to the airport and sitting out here on my patio trying to enjoy my day. But I wanted to send this quick message out because of the conversation that we shared. So, what's interesting is we have a couple of cases coming up here where you see the war on sex, prosecutorial outreach, and the fear mongering all coming to a frenzied confluence and a frenzied pitch. So you have a person, three persons actually, who had committed, apparently, according to the law, a sex offense. I don't know what they did. I don't know their names. It's not really important. It's the importance. The importance here is how the system reacted to an event. And the event was they're trying to put their lives back together. They're trying to get on with their lives and be productive members of society. And so these three men who had apparently committed an offense decide to go into the restaurant business. Not an easy business by any estimate. And their probation officer apparently didn't like that when they reported what they were doing. And so at least one of them was arrested and will now have to go before a judge for a probation violation. It appears that this probation officer decided, and I have personal experience on this and experience of many others too, they will decide, oh, I don't like this, you can't have that job. Or in my case, I was working at FedEx and doing very well, and they decided that they would have me arrested because of some hearsay. And as a result of that hearsay, I was placed in custody for 6 months while the State Patrol tried to find evidence against me and failed. Those charges were ultimately dismissed, but it was very disruptive to my life. So similarly, they're going to disrupt these people's lives who are trying to do something productive with their lives. Third instance, you have a young man who was driving with three teenage girls in the back. This is perfectly legitimate. He's a respectable person in the community. I think one was his daughter. And he overheard them talking about being sexually active. And rather than pretending he didn't hear or rather than scolding them for it, he simply asked them if they had been using birth control. Well, one of the girls apparently didn't like the fact that she was overheard. She went home and told her mother. The mother reported it to the police, but of course, the mother nuanced and massaged it. And this man is now serving 8 years for a crime, the crime of supposedly soliciting the young girls, when in fact that's not what he was doing. Now, again, I haven't examined every one of these cases. I'm merely reporting what I heard, and it is second and third hand information. On the other hand, I do have first hand information of lots of cases just like this, and they go down exactly this way. In fact, I'm trying to find one of my files right now that had to do with an art teacher who had her total mistaken identity, nevertheless had her entire career destroyed and is on the registry, and she had nothing to do with that. I've already told you about similar cases in the western part of the state where somebody attempted to investigate a crime before reporting it so they could get their facts together, and they too were netted in this. Because you have to understand, this is big business. You have to understand that the police and the prosecution and the registry gives loads of money to law enforcement. Uh, it makes the politicians look good. $10 million a year to maintain the registry in Virginia. It's absurd. It's ridiculous. And even if the figure you say, well, it's not 10 million, it's only 2 million, whatever it is in any state, it's too much versus what you're actually getting for it. And what are you getting absolutely from this? What would be your solution for it? I heard from a viewer this morning of yesterday's video, and his comment was, there's a study out there which says that if you have a list, that's a good thing because at least people are informed. I call bullshit on that study. I haven't read it, but there's a raft of studies out there that prove quite the opposite. That prove that it costs money and you don't get any material benefit. And let's remind you of one little thing that people like me have to be subjected to. When I went to renew my license, my driver's license last year, I ordinarily would be able to renew it for 8 years. In fact, I can't renew it for any more than 5 years. Why 5 years? What's the difference between 5 years and 8 years? The only thing that makes sense is they want to punish you. This is one more thing to remind you that you're a second or third class citizen, that even though we're happy to take your payments on a regular basis in taxes, or we're happy to take your personal property taxes, we will and grudgingly allow you, depending on who the governor is, to vote in our elections. We're going to restrict you in every other way. We're going to keep you off of social media, because even though the law enforcement lost that argument in the Packingham case, Packingham v. North Carolina, uh, what you do have to report your social media sites, or rather your emails, and you have to report to the various probation or whoever is the compliance officer on a regular basis, so they have that where they're able to at least track where you live and what you do, etc. But your First Amendment rights are often curtailed if you're on probation, or the terms of service of a particular provider may not allow you, because you have a sex offense on record. Whether it's true or not is irrelevant, to be on that platform. So your speech is already, your ability to defend yourself is already severely curtailed. So again, please hit me back. Let me know how you think this is fair or right, or what a good solution would be. Because we have ridiculous cases like this that have collateral consequences. So I'm going to share one of my personal story here before I let you go. And this happened in November of 2021. I was sitting here minding my own business, setting up this very computer system, when the whole house began shaking. At first, I thought it was an earthquake, because we had one little one a number of years ago when I lived in Alexandria. And but this was extraordinary. The whole house was shaking. I heard shouting and yelling. I heard beating on my door. I went down to find out that they had used an implement law enforcement had to bust down my door. And they had kicked it in, broke it from its frame, and was demanding that I come out with my hands up. I was stunned. I couldn't believe it. I had a young black tenant who had a little red dot on him, and I was scared to death that they were going to shoot him and kill him. Not to mention myself, but I really didn't think much of myself. I was worried about him, and I was more stunned that they had done this. Well, here's the story. That goes back, we have to go back to 2 p.m. the previous hours, and actually noontime. I had an argument with a tenant of mine that I had suspected was doing drugs, particularly, or dealing drugs, pardon me, dealing drugs, particularly while I was in jail. I had just gotten out on September 11th. It was 2 months later, and I had suspected him before, but I couldn't prove it. This time I did. And he wouldn't admit it, but demanded that I mind my own business. And when I told him he has to leave, he, in a huff, packed. He said he'd be out in 2 hours, and he was. This was at noon, and by 2 p.m., he and his boyfriend had moved everything out of my house. Fine. 5:15, the event I just explained occurred, where the whole house shook. Police dragged me out of my own home. They kept shouting at me as they grabbed me and leveraged against one of my concrete steps. Quit resisting, they said. And I said, I looked up, I saw a camera right here in one of the offices, and I said right directly to the camera, I am not resisting. I repeat, I am not resisting. They are dragging me out of my home. I do not know why. They're claiming that I'm resisting. I am not resisting, and I am on camera stating that fact. One of the lead guys said, "Oh, get him up, stand him up," and they stopped repeating that, because apparently they knew that I knew that it was bullshit and that it was being recorded. They dragged me out. They put me in handcuffs. They enter my building. They have my tenant there in another place, and a guest also separated, or all in handcuffs. And they asked me about the tenant I had just thrown out. They had been surveilling my house. They knew exactly what room it was. It was my daughter's former bedroom that I had to convert and rent out, as I did with the other two rooms. Why? Because I couldn't afford to keep my home anymore after they had destroyed my career. I was making a six-figure income finally after over 30 years in teaching and after amazing amounts of effort and time, and lost everything as a result of that. And so I had to rent out rooms in order to keep my house. And that's exactly what I did. On the plus side, I provided housing for people who need it, where we have this tremendous housing shortage down here, as is with other places. But the police, uh, a combined FBI, and they had Loudoun County, they had Fairfax County police force, they had everybody together. My tenant, the young black kid, later said that when he was coming home from work, he saw them all staging at the Wawa down on the corner. Of course, I knew nothing about any of this stuff, and they wanted to find the ringleader. They had decided that I was the ringleader, and here's the point: because I had a conviction, they assumed I must have been into other things too. Of course, I wasn't. And they later told me that they had already arrested this tenant I had thrown out an hour later. So between 2 when he left and 3 when he was trying to sell drugs in Fairfax County, they had arrested him on site, followed him, arrested him on site. So they already had the culprit. But it was just irresistible not to kick in my door and take everything, look through everything. Of course, they found nothing indicative of drugs or illegal or illicit activities on the part of myself or any of my tenants. But that was, how long did it take? Something like 6 hours later. Before they left, they apologized. The FBI did. They gave me information to call and have my um, front door repaired, etc. Well, this is a cold November 15 day. I was dressed in sort of a muscle shirt and shorts, and they didn't allow me to put on any additional clothes or a coat, and I was shaking all over, freezing to death. They had the door wide open, the air conditioning run, or the HVAC running, heat pouring out. And when I called to get it addressed, I soon discovered that it would take uh, quite a bit of time. It wasn't, by the time I finished all the paperwork and got it to them, they would get right on it about February 15th. I said, well, that's unacceptable. I said, well, it's freezing. What if I paid for everything? Oh, yes. And would I be eligible for reimbursement? Oh, that would be no problem. What followed was problem. 6 months of problem, fighting with them to pay, nitpicking every little item on here, and we ended up having to settle. Long story short, I went through Jerry Connolly's office, my representative at the time. The office tried, but they were useless. Um, and I ended up getting a very nice man who was about to retire from the FBI, an attorney for them, and he said, "Look, I know this sounds strange, but the reason they keep denying it is they wanted a receipt." I said, "I sent receipts." He said, "No, you don't understand. They wanted one receipt for all the things." I said, "I don't know if there's one place I could go to get everything. I can't get the master carpenter to fix it, the guy to do the wiring for the security system that they damaged, the paint I have to get somewhere. I don't see how I could do that." Well, that's what they wanted. So we ended up settling for 2/3 of what they actually owed me. So I ended up getting something like $884 for the damage they did, and the security system is still not fixed. And I wrote the assistant deputy director or something a scathing letter explaining that I once was very, very much in favor of the FBI, but not anymore. Not anymore when I see what they do. It's very, very hard for me because I admire law enforcement. They have a tough job. They want to keep us safe from domestic as well as foreign threats. But boy, they sure have ruined a lot of our lives needlessly. And by the way, what again was the point of all that? What again? This is what they do, continuing to attack you along the way, little by little. You're already suspect. And I wouldn't be a bit surprised if I'm being surveilled right now. So I ask you, what do you think we ought to do? What's the appropriate response? Well, the first thing I've said we need to do is get at the true nature of the problem of the sexual predation of children, and then marshal the resources toward that. Stop playing games, stop pretending it's where the danger is where it's not. It's not on dating sites. The danger is in other places. And it's about time they start looking at those places. Be happy to hear your thoughts. Take care. Enjoy your day.